Deputy Howlin made about the National Maternity Hospital ownership and management ethos. The Religious Sisters of Charity own the land on which the new facility is built. The government is negotiating with them through their company, St Vincent's Healthcare Group. That group will have a majority on the National Maternity Hospital Board of Management and will chair the board. The reality, if things don't change, is that women's healthcare is at risk, as well as the state's finances. Ethos will follow ownership. It's unrealistic to expect a Catholic maternity hospital owned by the Nuns Company to provide a full range of services, including contraception, sterilisation, abortion, IVF, etc., because they contravene the Catholic Code. And so I think it's necessary that there is a review of the contract agreed between the Minister of Health and the Religious Sisters of Charity and proposal of measures to bring the hospital into public ownership with a secular ethos and secular board of management. A related point I want to raise, which also relates to the National Children's Hospital, is the question of the carbon emission specifications to which they're being built. I put a question to the Minister for Health and got an answer from the HSE that the maternity hospital is being built to A3 standards. And I got expert advice on that, and it's clear that it's nowhere near the near-zero energy building standards required for all new public buildings from the 1st of January 2020. In fact, the building has been designed to 2008 building regulations, not the current 2019 regulations. If they continue to build in the current way, it's going to need to be retrofitted at up to 10 times the cost of building it to near zero now from the outset, if indeed a deep retrofit is possible in a hospital. So I think that urgently needs to be changed while the building is ongoing. Taoiseach,
I'll give you 5 minutes.
Thanks, Deputies, for your questions. Just in relation to the Coolshta Holiday Home, it's operated by the Irish Wheelchair Association, but isn't owned by them, as the Deputy mentioned. I do acknowledge that there are real concerns from people with disabilities who have used the home in the past for their holidays, and they want to continue to be able to do that. And of course, that local people are concerned too, because it does provide employment in the area and is a big part of the economy in the area. And of course, people don't want to lose that, nor do we want to see it lost, because it is a part of the country in which there aren't many other economic or employment opportunities, unfortunately. In terms of grant aid from government, we would need to know that there would be a long-term lease in place, as is always the case when it comes to government capital funding. You don't want to have a situation whereby you provide hundreds of thousands or millions of euros for works to be done, only to find out a year or two later that the owner has decided to do something else with it. But I'm sure that can be resolved by means of a long-term lease being provided. And I will raise it again with Minister McGrath, who's the line minister responsible for disability. Deputy Martin referred to the whole issue of cutting back the roads budget and reprofiling the roads budget. Just in the interest of clarity, what I was referring to was a Green Party motion which Fianna Fáil voted for, which called for the reprofiling of funds away from roads to public transport, even though Project Ireland 2040 already favours public transport over roads in a 2-to-1 ratio. It's simply on the record of the Dáil that Fianna Fáil did vote for that motion to reprofile funding away from roads towards public transport. Deputy Eamon Ryan has raised it in Leaders' Questions and is concerned that Fianna Fáil backtracked so quickly on a motion that they voted for. Perhaps they didn't understand the motion they were voting for. But I do think it is part of an increasing anti-rural agenda by the Fianna Fáil party, opposing the National Broadband Plan, advocating that we cut back the roads budget, and also going down a road which will end in the banning of the burning of turf and wood in rural areas, which Fianna Fáil seems to want to support, even though they don't seem to realise it. I do, of course, Alaska and Corla understand why they're doing it. They want the Greens to put them in office after the next general election. I totally understand the strategy behind that. But Fianna Fáil can't have two faces. They can't be cozying up to the Greens in Dublin and then pretending to be the party of rural Ireland when they're not in Dublin. And I'm glad that we've been able to expose them on that. In relation to the updating the profiles for Project Ireland 2040, that's done twice a year at the time of the budget and at the time of the summer economic statement, and there is an online tracker which I accept is not up to date. We will up to date. Yeah, I just said I accept that's not up to date, but we will update it. I think Deputy Howlin asked about the National Maternity Hospital. It's our policy that the hospital will be publicly owned and that the land that it's on will be in public control. I do think it's important, though, to acknowledge that the National Maternity Hospital, not too far from here, is a really good hospital and already has a Catholic ethos. The chairman of the board is the Archbishop of Dublin. Now, he doesn't attend, but it is already a hospital that has a Catholic ethos, and that has not prevented Holles Street, the National Maternity Hospital, performing terminations and providing fertility treatment. So, I think we shouldn't get involved in unnecessary church bashing when it's not fair, and I don't think it's fair on this occasion. Work is being done already on the St Vincent's site. A new pharmacy is being built, and works are happening on the car park, and those works have to be done before the National Maternity Hospital is built. It's intended that it shall go to tender in 2020. The Minister for Health is ambitious that we can get it started in 2020, but I think at the very least we'll get it to tender in 2020, which of course is next year. In relation to the railway line to Maynooth, I won't irritate Deputy Burton by listing all the achievements that Fine Gael and Labour achieved together in the 5 years that we served in government. So I'll only mention the ones that were done by Fine Gael and Independent Alliance and the independents in the last 3.5 years in relation to the railway line to Maynooth. The first is that we now have on order new carriages for those railway lines. They're coming from Japan. They'll be in service by 2021 and will increase by 34% the capacity on the Maynooth line, the Drogheda line and the Kildare line. It's now 2019, so 2021 is just under 2 years' time. But they are on order. If they could come any quicker, they would, but no government can make carriages come from Japan any quicker, unfortunately, Deputy, so it wouldn't be any different if you were in government. I'd have to double check, but I think the new locomotives are now already on order as well, and those locomotives will be hybrids. They'll be electric and diesel, and that allows us to shift on a phased basis from diesel to electric on that line. And also we've approved €100 million in funding for the National Train Control Centre at Houston, and that allows us to organise the slots better and get more trains in and out of Houston and Connolly, which is a pinch point. So